right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Leah Walker, and I am the Senior Vice President of External Affairs with Family and Children's Place and FREML President this year. I'm so happy to see everyone this morning. I know that everyone's adapting to the new normal with COVID and working from home, and we really appreciate you joining us virtually at FREML this morning. Unfortunately, no free coffee and tea this morning from FREML, but we hope that you are brewing a cup of your own at home. And with that quick introduction, I just want to say thank you again. I know we've had a few guests join us this morning, and I want to bring Renee to really kick us off to the presentation and introduce our speakers. Before we begin though, I want to remind everyone to please put yourself on mute so that there's no background disturbances for the speakers while they're talking, and to also post any questions that you might have into the chat box so we can continue to ask those of our presenters. So with that, Renee, take it away.
Sure, good morning everybody. Thank you again for joining us. We are extremely lucky to have 4 panelists this morning. So I will do just a brief introduction, but I'm actually going to give them each a chance to introduce themselves so that I don't take up so much time reading bios. We've got Jim Evans with us today from Affordable Fundraising Help, Jennifer Fust-Rutherford from the Community Foundation of Louisville, Liz Hack from Griffin Fundraising and Marketing and a FREML EC member, and Mike Schultz, who is a development consultant, coach, and facilitator with Ashley Rountree, I think. Yeah, I think I got that right. Okay, so I want to give each of them maybe a minute or two, just kind of let us know a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the questions. And very quickly, like Leah said, please make sure that you are putting any questions that you have or that might come up into the chat box, and I will be monitoring that, and we'll try to get as many questions answered as we can today. But with that, Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can do that pretty briefly. I have served nonprofits for a very long time. In fact, I was thinking the other day, I had my first fundraising experience probably before most of you were born in 1974. I have been in fund development, marketing, communications, been executive director, board member, and now consultant. And I was served on FREML board for a number of years, president for 2 years, was also on the board at AFP. I have earned the CFRM from Indiana University Lilly School, and raised a lot of money, so helped a lot of people. And now in my semi-retired state, I'm putting to use what I have learned for the benefit of nonprofits in an affordable way, hence the name, Affordable Nonprofit Help.
All right, thank you, Jim. Jennifer?
Thanks. I'm Jennifer Fust-Rutherford with the Community Foundation of Louisville, and I'm the Director of Gift Planning there. I just started about 2 years ago and came from practicing law for more years than I want to say. And I'm thrilled to be on the panel with Mike Schultz today, who provided some of my initial training and orientation to this field, which I felt like I was, getting the hang of and figuring out how it works. And then COVID-19 happened, and now we're learning it all differently together. So I'm really thankful for the team at the Community Foundation, and it's just been a wonderful experience. And I feel like FREML sounds like a wonderful group that I would also like to learn from as well. So I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jennifer. Liz?
Welcome, good morning. Liz Hack with Griffin Fundraising and Marketing, and I'm actually a second generation fundraiser. It's pretty much been, I guess, in my blood to work with clients. And I've been with Griffin Fundraising and Marketing for this time around probably 9 years now. We work as a full service consulting firm, particularly with small to medium sized nonprofits, and supporting them as they make their big dreams come true, typically with a capital campaign project. I have earned my CFRM. I have been on the board of FREML for longer than I care to admit, I think at this point, working with the organization to kind of develop their online presence and marketing presence as a fundraising group. And I also am the host of a new podcast called Small Shop Fundraising. And it is geared towards small to medium-sized nonprofits and the topics and issues facing them today.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And Mike.
Good morning, everyone. I feel very connected to this group of panelists this morning. It's good to be with you all, good friends. I began my fundraising and development career a little over 20 years ago at Brookline Child and Family Services. Cut my teeth very early on a capital campaign. I think I was 15 days into the job when I was told that's what we were going to do, but it was successful. We had another campaign followed that, and then some endowment building. So annual fund, I wore all the hats there at Brookline. That's how I got my start. I was there for 12 years and then moved on to the Community Foundation of Louisville as Vice President of Development and Stewardship. And then a couple of years ago, I thought it was time, I think I followed Jim, I thought it was time for a little semi-retirement. So since then, I've been consulting with local nonprofits and just recently joined forces with actually Rountree and Associates to work on a couple projects. So I guess over half of my working career now has been dedicated to the nonprofit world.
All right, thank you, Mike. So just to start out, I think it's important for everyone, if our panelists are comfortable, we just kind of want to give you a chance to address the current climate racially in the city right now. We've got a lot going on. As fundraisers, there's a lot, obviously, that we have to navigate in general, plus with a pandemic and now with, issues with race relations. So if each of you or if any of you would like to comment on what nonprofits should be doing right now, we've seen a lot of nonprofits release a statement. We've seen others not release a statement. So is that something that we should all be doing? Is it how if you are a nonprofit that is not directly working on race relations, how should you be responding right now? Or just any tips that you'd want to give us?
I'm happy to respond really quickly. I've been thinking about this question since you sent it to us, Renee, and one thing that I saw in a national nonprofit Facebook group that I'm a part of was a meme that was kind of snarky, I'll be honest, and but it struck me, and I just wanted to share it with you. It said, "Thank you for your Black Lives Matter post or picture or meme. Now let me see a picture of your board, your staff, your leadership." And it struck me because what I thought that meme was saying is let me see how diverse you really are, and let me see what kind of angles and voices are leading your nonprofit. And I think that is one thing that we can all kind of turn inward and look to see who is leading our organizations, and have we done an audit to see if all of our voices that are impacting our mission are being heard. And that is definitely one thing that I think we could take a minute or two as nonprofits and really look at, just to make sure that we've got all the voices that we need in the room leading our organization and its mission.
Follow up with that a little bit on what Liz said. I think this pandemic has given us the nonprofits an opportunity to sit back and really ask ourselves why we do what we do. We want to keep our mission true to what we're currently doing, regardless of what's going on out there. I think this has been really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for development folks to get closer to their donors. I know every organization is a little bit different, but they do need to evaluate themselves of where they are, what their capacities are, what they can do during this time. Many organizations have already been working on their diversity issues, how they can become more diverse. But I think after you make that evaluation on where your organization is, then you do want to think about how you can communicate that to those that are closest to you, your board and your donors. If you've really missed the boat, or you're going to continue to miss the boat if you don't use this opportunity to reach out to your supporters at this time. Many people have not been working, they've been at home, they've been very accessible to phone calls, to texts, to emails. And so I think the door is still open, there's still a window there. So if you haven't done that as a nonprofit, develop a way that you can begin reaching out to your donors and having some more intimate discussions than you've been able to have.
All right. Anyone else want to add anything? Nope. Okay. So to switch gears just a little bit, since we are still, of course, in the age of COVID, how do nonprofits avoid over-COVIDing? So I stole that, quote from somewhere else, but that's something that I think is really starting to become an issue. We have seen commercial after commercial, email after email, we're with you during these unprecedented times, and over and over and over. How do we get out of that? How do we avoid falling into those traps and people just start disconnecting from our message?
Well, I'll start. And it kind of follows up with what Mike was saying. I agree. There's a whole lot of emails and messages people see and hear on radio, TV about COVID. And, the thing that seems to reach the donors the most is a phone call. Especially with older donors, this can be very isolating. They need to stay home. They can't see their grandkids, but they want to, and they want to talk. So giving them a call just to say, how are you? And then if they want to talk about COVID, or they want to talk about what's going on in the city, being an ear that's willing to listen goes a really long way. And I think that sticks with the donors more than any mailing we can send to them.
Yeah, I've tried to say to my the clients that I'm working with now, let people know that you're still in business. Let people know that you're still working behind the scenes, that even though you may not be out in the public eye as much as you were pre-COVID, that you're still doing what you're supposed to be doing, that your mission is still important, and you're still involved in operating that mission. Because COVID or non-COVID, the people that you serve still have needs, and that's what nonprofits are about. It's about serving the people who have the needs in our population. And so I've been saying, get out there and let them know that, you're taking care of some things, you're dealing with all the operational issues that come your way, but still what is foremost in your mind and in your heart is the mission of your nonprofit, and let them know that you appreciate them having that same feeling.
Okay. Let's see, I have a message here from Rich Flaherty from St. Vincent de Paul, who would like to just say a couple of things about what they're doing successfully. So Rich, do you want to take a minute and chime in?
Thanks, Renee. As the camera. Can you guys hear me okay?
I hear you.
Okay, good. So yeah, I'm Director of Development at St. Vincent de Paul, and obviously, we're in the middle of this whole situation with regards to the population that we support. And honestly, the philosophy that we have, that I've taken with my team and with the donors, kind of goes along with what Jennifer said a bit ago, but also it's to over communicate with the donors right now. But be conscious of the fact that we are all dealing with a constant barrage of news and a lot of negative about what's happened between COVID and now with the protests that we tried to balance the messaging in our newsletter and in our communications out, where we're not constantly during COVID, when COVID was fresh, not constantly having COVID messaging all the time. But 1 month we'll hit them with more of a COVID related newsletter, and then the next month we go back to our standard newsletter with much more uplifting stories and success stories, and then come back with maybe a mini COVID newsletter just to keep us updated as far as what's happening. A lot of our donors are very interested in how we're doing and what's going on. And then going to what Jennifer said, we've beefed up our phone calls. We're typically, especially around thank you calls for the donation, we've dropped our calls down to a very small dollar figure to be able to give them calls to thank you, all the way down to $50. And part of that is that connection, that personal connection that Jennifer, just touching base and seeing how they're doing and making sure that you allow them to ask you how organization's doing, because they don't know. And it's been very positive with regards to our response from our. So, as I said, I think philosophy is being overly communicative, to the extent that we just sent out Friday a message from Rountree, our executive director, addressing the whole protesting side and what's happening on that side and how we're impacting us, and being very open and honest about all that. So that's how we've done it, and it, as I said, it's proved to be very effective, both just in the response from our donors, but also as far as the response of how pleased they are to hear from us, but also obviously from a financial standpoint, it's helpful.
All right, thank you, Rich. So on the same topic, what should stewardship, that's kind of what we're talking about right now, what should stewardship and primarily conversations with your major donors, what should those look like during this time?
Can answer that. They need to be personal. They need to be timely. They need to be accurate. They need to be transparent and honest with where your organization is. I listened to a webinar the other day, it was a few weeks ago now, that Jeff Ashley did, so I'm going to use his quote. But he said, best practices are still best practices, even though we're in an unusual time. So you want to keep doing the things that you would normally do with your top donors, and that is having those personal conversations. Donors still during this time, they want to know what's going on at the organization. They want to know that their gift is making a difference. They want to know that your mission is relevant. So you need to communicate those off. And my quick thought on the over communication is, most organizations have upped their digital game, and they are sending out more mass digital information. Don't think that everybody is reading those. That's why this personal phone calls and handwritten notes and even formal letters and all those things could be very effective at this time, as our donors and prospects wade through all the digital information that they're receiving.
Oh, we can't hear you, Liz.
I would just piggyback onto that and say there's just one, there's not going to be one answer for every nonprofit. And one thing that I have known to do is to test. And so, like Rich was telling us, for them and their donors, it's effective. People are, I guess there's a higher open rate for him with his newsletters if he does every other communication style. Perhaps, maybe your donors are on Facebook, or maybe, you have to do a mixture of things just to make sure that your outreach is connecting to where your donors are. So, they might not be opening their email. They may not have email. So really, there's not one magic bullet that we can share for every nonprofit, But the true thing is to test and to take the time and try different things. Even this is a great time to do it. Is to try different things that maybe your nonprofit hasn't done since the beginning of this year or even ever.
Yeah, I got a call from one of my clients saying, I read somewhere that businesses are struggling and people are struggling, and we shouldn't be asking for money right now. And I said to them, well, yeah, I wouldn't ask for money unless you need it. And if you need it, then ask, because people are still giving. People are still donating. I don't know if you've all seen the commercials on TV for Subaru. Subaru is providing 50 million meals. Not sure what meals has to do with Subaru, except to say that Subaru is concerned about their image and their response in this time of crisis. Here locally, those of you who've been following the Breonna Taylor saga, really terrible thing, but they started a fund a need for her and her family. I think they set a goal for something like $500,000, and in 3 days raised $4.5 million. And so what that tells me is that if people are connected to a need, they're going to support it. And there is money out there to support it. We just have to be telling the story, letting people know what our needs are in order to support and help the people that are our mission, and give them an opportunity. I have learned for a long time that I don't need to protect anybody's checkbook. They're very capable of doing that themselves. But what I do need to do is, if I have a need, I need to ask.
I think that all sounds correct too. And apart from the method of contacting the donors, I find there's a few things that have struck me about the content of the communications that we're having with our donors. To pick up on what Jim said, we've had a number of donors that have contacted us and said, what can I do? How can I help being quarantined in my home with what's going on in Louisville? And I think having an answer for that when they call you is key. They want to help. So give them an outlet to help. Two other things I've noticed in our conversations. One is I'm hearing a whole lot more of people who they want to know how to make a bequest. They want to know how to include things in their will. I don't know if being at home has allowed people more time to do things that they've been putting off, or if this is just more prominent in their minds right now. But I think that's very much on donors' radars right now. So if you have a good relationship and you're having a conversation with them, and that does come up, there's an opportunity to talk about it. I think now is a really good time to talk about it, because I think it's on people's minds. I think the other thing to remember also, even with your large donors, is that even they may not have lost a job due to COVID-19, but they've maybe watched their retirement savings take a pretty wild ride on the market. And they may be feeling sort of insecure about what their financial plan is as well. And it's a good time, if you know they have a donor advised fund with Community Foundation of Louisville or Southern Indiana or a commercial fund, if you know that they have a fund like that, it's a good time to remind them that that money is useful right now. And that's not something that has to impact what they're worried about in terms of daily existence right now. And that's a great way to remind them that they can still be really helpful in a way that doesn't make them worry more right now.
Okay, those are all really great answers. And on that vein, what are your suggestions for organizations that are not considered on the front lines? So a lot of, funding, especially, foundations and what have you, have started switching and saying, we're only giving to frontline COVID, response efforts. What are your suggestions for nonprofits who are not necessarily frontline, organizations that are in the arts, for example? What are your suggestions for how they can remain relevant during this time and how they should be communicating with their donors?
It's Mike. They have to continue to tell their story, stay true to their mission, use the word relevant. I think that's a good word. How are they relevant during this time? What are they doing? I know many of them since they can't have individuals come to their organizations and do what they normally do, they're doing it online. So they have to keep telling the story to the community and show that their mission is going on during this time, and then convey that to your donors and your prospects and your sponsors and those people that support you. Let them know that their gifts are still making a difference. They still need their help, and we're still part of the benefits in this community. And I will add this. I think some organizations who don't think they are helping because they're not on the front line, if they really look closer to what their organization is doing, I think they can see that there is a connection and a benefit to what's going on now.
Yeah, I think the pet shelters have proven that, haven't they? They're emptying them out because people are at home and they want companionship, they want company, and they're helping by fostering and adopting dogs and cats. We can say the same thing about, it doesn't matter what your organization is, you know, if it's animals, if it's arts, if it's human services, if it's education. If you have a nonprofit, you have a nonprofit because there's a need. And you just need to say, here's what the need is. Now, some donors are going to focus, and this happens all the time. You know, people get excited about something or concerned about something, and they begin to funnel a lot of funds into that thing. But that too will pass, and things will return to a bit of normalcy where they'll be a little more open to things that are not frontline. Just keep working.
Yeah, I just think they have to be creative. And I know that's not a new thought, but if we're talking about the arts, I've heard a story about Teddy Abrams getting on a truck with his piano and riding around Louisville playing music in the first part of COVID-19 to bring joy, because people need that in their life in order to move forward. While I was doing non-traditional instruction with my elementary school little girl, we learned how to do ballet through the Louisville Ballet. And that was all virtual. And so the arts are becoming creative. And I think other nonprofits really need to look inward and think outside of the box in order to remind people that they are as important. Well, not as important, they are important, and they do provide something to this community like they always have. And they just got to stay true to their mission and bring it to people in a different way than maybe they thought about in the past.
All right. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, I was just going to say, picking up on what Liz said, and I would love to say this is my own idea, but it was one of many webinars that I listened to when all this started, just to try and get my bearings. And one of the webinars, the point was to do something to bring your donors some joy, just to be a bright spot. And it's to bring them closer, but also, and to lift them up, but also to remind them of why they support you in the first place. So I think that cannot be underestimated. I think it's a great point.
All right, so staying with donor communications, this was an interesting question. How honest should you be with your donors? So if you are seeing maybe an extraordinary loss due to, you know, having to cancel events, or if maybe you're doing pretty well, you're doing a lot better than maybe some other organizations, how honest should we be with our donors?
Well,
I think you're always honest with people.
mm-hmm.
Anytime that you place yourself in a position where you're being less than honest, you're destroying your mission, and you're destroying the trust that your donors and the community at large places in you. And so if they get any sense that that you're not telling the truth, you're going to pay the price for that. And so that, you know, it's an old watchword, but honesty is the best policy.
And just to follow up on that, one of the only big tools that fundraisers have in their toolbox is our integrity. And if that is in any way tarnished, that can be the downfall for the entire organization. And, you know, people who may have been around with other events saying that they're raising money for, this was decades ago, they're raising money for XYZ nonprofit, but only like 2% of the profit was going to the nonprofit. Those stories are still around in this community, and honestly, honesty is the best policy. That's something that we have been taught through our entire lives.
I think your key donors, they want to know what's going on, the folks that are closest to you. So I think it's important to share that. And even if you're not doing so well, maybe your annual appeal at the early in the year, early spring isn't going as well. I think it's okay to let them know that, but I think it's also important to let them know that what you are doing in this time, let them know that you're continuing on with the means that you have. Same way, if you're doing great and you're being able to expand your mission and do more for the community during this time, you tell that story.
Yeah, and how you tell it's important. You know, you don't send something out and say, oh, you know, if we don't get $1,000 today, we're going to close our doors, and people, you know, that's not the way you tell your story. You can say in a very honest way, this has been a tough time for our nonprofit, but we're doing A, B, and C to make sure that we're still helping the people who need our help, and here's how you can join us in that task.
Yeah,
so it's, you know, it's still storytelling.
Solution-based content is you know, is what we're kind of talking about, is being honest, but also saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, and here's how you can help, and engage your donors that way through the solution and not through the problem.
Okay, so in turning towards events, everyone is meeting online right now. So I can't tell you the number of Zoom calls I do in a day, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who does about 1 million Zoom calls every day. So with everyone meeting online, how likely is it that people will not want to do an online event or not want to go online again for something else?
We've switched. This isn't so much a fundraiser, but an online event. We've certainly added a lot of online events, webinars, some content that's been recorded and then put onto our website. We're trying to respond to the needs that we're hearing. Rather than doing something general, we're trying to respond to what seems to be important to our donors at the moment. This is a big uptick for us. We haven't done webinars before. We've done, you know, over the years, there have been more, there have been less in-person meetings. The online ones seem to be going pretty well. We're getting pretty good attendance at them. We try and send them to donors that we know will be interested in that topic, and then go a little bit broader than that as well. And we are seeing people that are interested in that. So to date, I think if the topic is really relevant to your donor, they're going to attend.
Yeah, and I think a question that goes along with that is how many people are really ready to get out and mingle with lots of other people. I think people are still concerned. They're still a little wary of big groups. They're still practicing social distancing, and they're going to continue to do that. And so you might find that they're actually more likely to attend something online than they would be to actually show up. We did, one of my clients, we did a 60th birthday party that they had planned to do as a live event for one of the founders of, the co-founders of this organization. They sent out, I think it was 200 invitations to come online. They didn't get that, but they had They were hoping for 50, and they got 60 people that actually came, stayed for the whole video, and by the time they were done with the project from start to finish, had raised, I think it was $12,000, which was pretty nice for them. So they weren't going to have anybody show up for a birthday party, but they did have people come online and do it, and had a good time.
I think the other question that you have to also put with that is, how do you want to engage your audiences? And that also means where are they online? Because there are a lot of our donors, a lot of our volunteers are already online. So if we don't create something new for them to go to, like a Zoom event, but we're engaging them where they already are, like social media platforms, like podcasts, clicking through an email to our Google Meet or whatever, we might break up the monotony of Zoom calls. And so potentially trying other platforms. And the good thing about being online is that you can also track that data. So you can see where they're coming from. You can see how long they stayed, like Jim was talking about. And then you can also see how much they donated. Capturing that that person's information can sometimes be just as important as the donation itself, because you can continually add them as part of your communication, whatever that looks like. So perhaps instead of thinking about all being online, we are already online in our different areas of interest. Instagram, so Twitter. So maybe changing that up a little bit so it's not as mundane.
Okay. Well, we've got a little under 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we are really making the most of our time. And so I kind of just want to get some feedback from all of you. What is your best piece of advice right now? I think that there are probably some people on this call who are, one-man shops. I think there are people who are trying to run a whole team for the first time virtually. I think that a lot of us are seeing just stress we've never really imagined. And so most of us are not necessarily able to sit down with a consultant every day and ask all of our questions. So this has been really, really helpful for everyone. But I just want to get from each of you kind of what are your best tips? What are your best pieces of advice for going forward, for what we should really be focusing on as fundraisers right now?
Well, I can say two quick things to that. One is I have done an awful lot of free consulting in this period. People have been calling and said, hey, listen, somebody told me that I could talk to you for a little while for free. Is that right? And I said, you bet. And I've talked to them about, answer their questions, that sort of thing. But I think no matter what your shop is like, no matter what your mission is, you work the fundraising process. There are 4 things in fundraising prospect: identification, cultivation, asking, and stewarding. And you figure out what you can do with what kind of vehicle, in what kind of market, and to what kind of target in all 4 of those areas. And if you'll do that, and if you'll work what you can work at this time and in those 4 areas, you're going to come out well on the other side. That's free advice.
Yeah, we too have been giving out, I've been talking with a lot of nonprofits, and we have typically, our first meeting that we have with any client is free cup of coffee, free, and then I invite them to FREML and learn from other smart folks. But I do have 2 pieces of advice. Fundraising is a team sport, so don't feel like it's all on you to get this done. Not just staff, but your volunteers, your development committee, your board. Engage them in a way that makes sense. So if that means sending out in U.S. Postal cards for them to then send out to donors for thanking, do that. If that means sending out a survey to your volunteers to see what they would be interested in doing, do that. Engage people to be on your team, because fundraising is not a sole sport. It's a team sport.
Right.
The other thing I want to say, and I think with COVID-19 and this worldwide pandemic, that's where this really helps me, is that if anybody's a Brene Brown fan, you may have heard this on her podcast, this is everyone's first time. And this is what Brene Brown calls an FFT. And we have to give ourselves some grace. We have to know that we might not get it right the first time. And we're going to have to be okay with that, but we have to learn from that and move forward. We also have to realize that we're going to have to be nimble and flexible. And to some people, that's going to be difficult. But we're going to have to be able to change on a moment's notice as everyone starts to figure out what COVID's going to do in the fall or even through the summer. So those are my two pieces of advice. Team sport, give yourself some grace.
Good.
Mike or Jennifer?
Well, I think probably the best piece is the one that we started with, which was to be personal, and to engage your donors in as personal a way as you can, whether that's handwritten thank you notes or a phone call. And then the other thing, when you communicate with them, I think what I hear from donors quite a bit is they want to know, they want data. They want, as Liz said, be solutions-based or be data-driven. They want to know what is new and happening and cutting edge, what is happening to address this problem or that problem, whether it's the mission of your organization or what's going on in the community. They want to hear the details, and they want to be involved in what that program is and feel like they're really helping to be part of a solution. So I think being prepared with specifics and data and whatever your solutions or plans are going forward, I think they really want to hear that.
And I'm going to try to give you something as tangible as possible here. All the ideas are great, but if you wanted something to do, I would go to your database after this gathering, and I would find out who you have marked as donor advised fund holders. And if you haven't already, I would pick up the phone and call them and ask them how they're doing and let them know what your organization is currently doing during this time. I think, Jennifer, you mentioned donor advised funds earlier. Regardless of where they have them, those are your key donors, your golden star donors. And my second tip, and Jennifer, I got to give you credit on this one too. You talked about bequests. I know that is a huge conversation right now with key donors in this community, and you have to keep the dialogue open and going with those individuals, because I think nonprofits have a great opportunity there in the days ahead. So donor advised funds and bequests, those are my two tips.
Yeah, and if I could add one more real quick thing, based on what Jennifer said about people want to know things, and based on what Liz said about helping your board and your volunteers to be involved. One of the things that I teach people, something I call Cultivation 111. And what that means is that everybody in your organization should be ready at all times with one datum, one piece of data. Did you know that X number of people have this experience? One story, here's something good that happened in my organization. And one question, that's 111. And the question is whatever that question is that will move that person along in the cultivation relationship, whether they're a donor or a prospect or a repeat donor and whoever they are. But one datum, one story, and one question, and always be ready with that.
Right. Well, thank you so much to each of you for being a part of our panel today. We really appreciate that. I don't know, Leah, do you have any announcements or anything before we wrap up? We are right at 9 o'clock, so good job, guys. We didn't go too far over, respected everybody's time.
My only quick update, obviously, thank you to the panel this morning, but just a reminder for our attendees, our next two meetings coming up on July 14th, That is normally our social event, and we are keeping it virtual. So what we are doing is we are doing a trivia event. And as a reminder, that's normally in the evening. It won't be in the morning. More information to come. Following that, August 11th, we are doing a virtual field trip, and that will be with the Ronald McDonald House. So more information to come on both of those upcoming events. Thank you again for joining us this morning. And with that, I think we are good to call the meeting to end. So thanks so much, everyone. You have a wonderful
everyone.
day.
Good to see y'all.